Hey, boredom, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite films. And today I'm going to be doing a movie review on a movie I watched last night, and that is 合女下女, or in English, A Touch of Zen. It's a stupid English title, I know. But 合女 or 下女 literally means the heroine, the hero, but it's a she, it's a female, the heroine, or the chivalrous woman, or the knight lady, or the whatever, the heroine, I think would be a way better title than A Touch of Zen. It's only translated to A Touch of Zen because it would appeal more to Western audiences. When this film came out in 1971, directed by King Hu, Wu Gamchun, who is one of the most legendary and important directors to ever exist in the Sinosphere back in the late 60s and early 70s. He is part of the Big Four in the early Hong Kong cinema. Of course, we have Zhang Hongcheng, Zhang Qi, we have Chou Yun, and then we have King Hu, Wu Gamchun. And so the Big Four, they're also a part of Shaw Brothers Film, which is one of the most important, if not the most important, film production company that Hong Kong has ever had. So, A Touch of Zen. This is a huge deal because rewind time. Let's go back to August of 2021 when I had lunch with Natalie, my friend, and Mr. P. Who is Mr. P, you ask? Well, Mr. P is my Chinese teacher, or was my Chinese teacher back in secondary school. And he's gone now, he's left Hong Kong. But before he left, he had lunch with me and Natalie. And during the lunch, I and Mr. P talked a lot about movies, and Mr. P had recommended me a lot of movies. And one of the movies he recommended is right here, A Touch of Zen. And the reason why he recommended this film is because I was speaking to him about Kurosawa, and I was wondering if there are period Chinese films as grand and as epic as a Kurosawa film. And then he said, yeah, there is. A Touch of Zen. Check it out. As well as Dragon Inn and other films, 中里头 by King Hu. But A Touch of Zen is the most seminal and the most well-known one out of his filmography. It even got a Criterion treatment. So, last night, I watched it all at once. 3 hours long. It's crazy. It's a long film, but I watched it all at once. I mean, there were times when it was buffering and I had to refresh the page, which is incredibly annoying, like every 2 minutes or so, but I still watched it all at once in one sitting. Now, this is the second Shaw Brothers film I've ever seen. The first one I've seen is The 36th Chamber of Shaolin I watched earlier this year, and I really love that film. That film is super accessible and entertaining. And because of that, I had really high hopes for A Touch of Zen because I thought it would be as accessible and as fun and as exciting as The 36th Chamber of Shaolin. But as it turns out, it's not. This film is way more artsy and way more inaccessible than I thought it would be. Now, before I get into the needy details, I would like to talk about that this film is an adaptation of a short story from Liu Zai or Liao Zai, Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio, which is a series of short stories compiled into a bunch of books that is written in the mid-Qing dynasty. And I even have a copy of some of the selected works in book form. I own it. It's cool. Now, so before I watched this film, I actually took some time out to read that short story. And after watching the film, I can attest that it doesn't even matter because the film itself is so different from the short story that it's based on. You don't have to read it in order to appreciate this film. Now, let's talk about the technical stuff. The cinematography, the editing, the music, it's all very top-notch. This is one of the most aesthetically pleasing period Chinese films I've ever seen in my life. And yes, that also includes the Zhang Yimou films that are Hero and Raise the Red Lantern. And what I like about the cinematography and the production design of A Touch of Zen is that it doesn't go for anything too fancy, unlike Hero. I mean, Hero is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, but I mean, come on. Like, middle-aged China does not look like that. Alright, the editing, crisp. It's actually really well done. A lot of nice, quick-paced edits from time to time. There is a split-screen montage in the second act of the movie. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And then we have the music, which is also pretty well done. And overall, this thing is in a technical level, really, really top notch. What I also really like about A Touch of Zen is that it is a very immersive experience. I love myself an immersive period film, like Barry Lyndon, for example. And There Will Be Blood is also a really immersive period film for me. I just really love watching period movies where the movie successfully makes me feel like I'm living in it as well. And this film is a very immersive experience. And I think one of the reasons why is because this film, especially in the first act, really take it slow. The first act of this film, I'll admit it, it's kind of slow. And it's a lot of exposition, and it's a lot of back and forth. Not a lot happens in the first act. But what this movie essentially does is that it puts you into that village during Ming Dynasty. And it just sets you there and let you sink in with the environment. And it makes it so much more immersive. The fights are really good. There are fights in this movie, and they're all really well done. They're all really well choreographed. They feel like dancing, but that's what's special about 70s action, really. 70s Hong Kong action, anyways. I mean, Sammo Hung, legendary fighter in Hong Kong cinema, Sammo Hung made an appearance as a small character, and Jackie Chan was actually an extra in this film. Alright, let's talk about the plot. And now let's talk about the plot of A Touch of Zen. Now, like I said, this film is way more art house than I thought it would be, because this does not... If you go into A Touch of Zen thinking you're gonna get an amazing, epic, exciting, fast-paced epic, well, you're not gonna get that. I mean, yeah, it's an epic, but also it's not very direct. It's not a very straightforward film, and the story doesn't have a lot of rhyme or reason to it. And that may turn some people off. And I myself also find it not super easy to get into a story that has a structure like this, because, minor spoiler alert, but in the beginning of the movie, the main character is obviously Gu Seng Zai. I think that's his name, but Mr. Gu. And he is sort of this young, not really young, I mean, he's about to turn 30, but he's this guy who's very artsy. He likes to draw, he likes to read, he's weak, he is meek, he is cowardly, and he doesn't have a wife. He's a loser, he's a loner. And in the beginning, we are sort of centered on him, but as the movie progresses, the main character goes from Mr. Gu to Miss Yang, who is this lady in her mid-20s who is a fugitive, running away from the government, running away from the Ming Dynasty government and the East Company, Dongchang, which is this group of spies hired by the Ming Dynasty government in order to kill all the political rivalries that the Ming Dynasty government has, or anyone whom the government doesn't like. And so the second part of the movie, or for the rest of the movie for that matter, that lady, Miss Yang, becomes the main character. And then in the last act of the film, it doesn't even feel like there is a main character. It's just a bunch of things happening. So at the end, it just feels like multiple stories put together, but more so, it feels like one story, but it's slowly drifting away from what it originally is. And it's just strange. It's poetic and also strange. It's like getting lost. It's like you're very into the story, you have the main character, you have his mom, you have him with his goals, and at some point you realize that that character and his goals and his needs and his desires don't even matter, and then you sort of move on very slowly and gently to whatever comes next. And that's what this film kind of comes off. It just drifts away. And this film also takes a lot of these martial arts novel stereotypes and cliches and basically wash it away. Again, the main character in martial arts novels are usually very strong, tough guys who are very, full of righteousness and justice. But our main character is not. He is clumsy, he is cowardly, and then something happens. There is a scene that implies sex, but it was written and edited in a way that it's not supposed to be a sexy scene. It's supposed to be a scene that just happens and you don't feel anything about it. Miss Yang, the female fugitive, the heroine of the story, she doesn't come off seductive or anything. She only did that thing in order to fulfill something, which in turn didn't even matter all that much at the end of the film. And again, the female character here is the strong, the tough, the powerful female character, which breaks a lot of female character archetypes in martial arts novels. In martial arts novels, the main characters are always being hunted down by the government because the government is always oppressing them. And it sort of happens here, but also it becomes the government versus Buddhist monks. And then we have a bunch of Buddhist monks at the end of the film. And we have the amazingly transcendent ending where the abbot, the leader of the team of Buddhist monks, starts to bleed gold, and he sits down, and the setting sun forms a golden halo around his head, and he just looks down. He doesn't even look. We just see a silhouette, and these characters, the government officials, the spies from East Company, the main characters, Miss Yang, Mr. Gu, they're always looking up, not believing what they're seeing. And the film just ends that way. And it's so weird, given that the Buddhists don't even show up until halfway through the film. And they're not even supposed to be a main or a supporting character. They're just there at the back. But it just ends off like that. And if there's one thing to say, it would be that it's bold because it's artsy. It's not meant to be a straightforward and direct story where we have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then the story concludes. It doesn't work like that. It's one continuous journey from Mr. Gu to Buddhist monks and everything in between. And it's just a continuous motion. And the second half of this film doesn't even feel like the first half. Pacing wise, plot wise, it just feels like a different movie now. And that's because A Touch of Zen is originally released in 2 parts, but later it is cut into 200 minutes, and then there's a 180-minute version. I watched the 180-minute version. There's probably more. Yeah, it's just very strange. There are multiple themes running throughout the film. There is the men's relationship with nature, which is really beautiful, given how nature plays such a huge role in this film. The bamboos, the white rocks, the temples, the village. Even the temples in the village, they feel so naturalistic. They feel like grass and flower and trees are growing through these copper slates and these stone slates and these rocks. The whole film is very poetic, and this film is also very learned. Like, there are multiple times when Mr. Gu, the first main character of this film, make a reference to Zhuge Liang in the beginning when he's like, 不求聞達於諸侯. And a little bit later he quotes Zhuangzi. And a little bit later in the film he quotes Zhuangzi. And at one point the heroine, Miss Yang, suddenly decided to sing a song, but that song is actually a poem, but turned into a song, a 李白 poem about the moon and himself and his shadow, which is a poem that I learned during my years in secondary school, which also became one of my favorite poems I've ever learned in that Chinese curriculum. So, very learned, very poetic, very beautiful, a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. This is just one of those movies that I really, really, really want to love because it's exactly what I love. I mean, it's Chinese period film. It touches on supernatural elements a little bit, but only a tad bit. There's politics involved. There's some layered characters. Religion is involved, and the whole thing is very poetic. But yet, there's something so weird about this film that I just maybe I'll have to rewatch it in order to fully appreciate it. I feel like I have to climb on top of that 10,000 Buddha monastery in Sha Tin back in Hong Kong, just 5 a.m. in the morning and watch the sunrise in order to fully appreciate this film. Or maybe I should go to somewhere in China and just climb a mountain to see a big Buddha in order to really feel the power of this film, among the bamboo leaves and something. So, yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know what to say. This is just one of those films that I just can't exactly say how I feel about it, like right now. So, yeah, feeling a Zen out of 10. So, have you watched A Touch of Zen? From 1 to 10, how much you rate it? Like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.